Like to welcome you to another episode of HIPHOPRAISEDME, the blog.com. We got Juice in the building. What it do, Juice?
Peace, 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 peace to all, you know what I mean, the gods of the earth and all that, yo, for real, man. It's good.
That part. All right, so look. It's all over the news. Kyrie, Kanye, all the politics and all the nonsense that goes beyond what's going on about the truth of our people. All right, so we got a special treat for y'all tonight, and we want y'all to see this. So before we proceed, Juice, what do you think about this premiere we're about to show?
I definitely think it's definitely interesting lens of the people of color in America, you know what I mean, and our journey here, and you know, just going through my self journey and finding out who my people were, you know what I mean, and I think it's important for all of us to not only like just look at this, but also everybody do their family research and find out what lineage you come from. Like, cause some of us are more, some of us are all from the lost tribes, you know what I mean? Some of us are indigenous, you know what I mean? And I think it's just everybody personal journey to find out, you know, which path would your ancestors came from. Cause the way we got here is just as colorful as we are as a people, if that makes sense. Like it's no one.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
it's not one story that encompasses. Cause for myself, in instance, when I had to do my part of, you know, my mother's side and my grandfather and his family, I found out I'm from the Yoruba people. Like, you know what I mean. So the Yoruba people, what we did have in the Yoruba society, there were Hebrews, there were Moors, there was Muslims, and also there was us. There was the brothers that practiced a religion system called Ifa that was like 8,000 years old. That it predates Christianity and Islam. No respect to both of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, and historically, it predates that, and we were called. We were kind of shunned by by the Hebrews, man. With respect, you know, we were shunned by the Hebrews and the Muslims and the quote unquote Christians. We were called you know, witches, and we practiced voodoo and witchcraft and Santeria, like things like that. Really, that was just part of my family's journey. No disrespect to anybody else's, but you know, that's my journey. And since I found my journey, I feel like a powerful being. I've been manifesting things that I understand in myself, that I you know, about myself, that I understand why I'm like this, like now, because my ancestors, you know what I mean something to me, and Allah Dumari, man, and you know what I mean, and all the guys before me, like for real, you know what I mean, just as powerful as any deity and any, you know what I mean, and in any good book per se. So I just to see somebody find their own personal journey. So I know some good brothers that are Israelites, you know. I know some brothers that's in Islam. I know some good brothers that's Hotep. I know some good brothers in all types of walks of life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's just.
I agree with you. You know, I know a lot of good brothers in all factions of life.
Yeah.
Whether they're woke or deal whatever religion they that they deal with. You know, I know a bunch of gods. You know, I know a bunch of brothers that deal with the faith of Muslims. You know, I know a bunch of Christians. You know, so I do agree with you. You should do your due diligence and find out what is your lineage. Actually figure out where your bloodline really come from, because it'll give you a better understanding of yourself. You understand? You know, it'll broaden your horizons. You know, not to be stuck on, what the environment you know, has for us, or what that stigma then, you know, being a product of your environment has. You know what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
So knowledge is key. Knowledge is power. Feel me? So we wanna, you know, we're gonna watch this with y'all. You know, it's like a reaction video. You know what I'm saying? So those of you tuning in, you know, tap in. You feel me? What I need y'all to do is share the live. Share it as much as possible. You know, because it's about to get real deep. So with that being said, Negroes the hero, you know, Hebrews to Negroes, or Robert Dalton, based on the book of Robert Dalton. All right.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
Where did Cain and Esau's seed go? And who were the Horites? Have these nations infiltrated the mighty kingdoms of old? Who are the children of the wicked one? The great masqueraders, a hidden people to torment mankind and the Israelites. We must understand their ancient past. The books have been opened. Come out of her, my people. It's time for the truth. A lie cannot live forever. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. Hebrews to Negroes and the Negro Network presents The End is Here Movie Workshop. For more information, go to www.HebrewsToNegrosMovie.com or www.thenegronetwork.com.
Rebirth of a nation, Hebrew kingdom building.
Yourself, man. I know we're pretty popular, but you know, some people are not familiar with you.
My name is Akwete Basalama. Some people know me as Rabbi Akwete Aman. We are on the set of Reclaiming the Throne. We're taking what belongs to us.
Yes, yes.
So Da, which is snake, and Home, which is home, tells us that the Home, when we got to Lokoja, after crossing the Benue River, we divided ourselves into 3 groups. One group went to Ile-Ife, Bomosho, and Bone. Those who went to Ile-Ife went by the name Gawo, Gamashi, and then La, Bone. Gawo means that we are the Gadites. Those pictographs, what we call Hindu, those symbols still used in the Feshini tribe. When you look at the customs and traditions of the Gadangles in Ghana, you will notice that we've been keeping the customs, many of the customs that you read about in the Torah. The Anglo-Arabs enact their Exodus story from Israel. They call this feast Hopechocho. When you come to the Gadangles celebrate a feast called Homowo. Homowo is actually the Passover narrative.
Okay. Introduce yourself. Yeah, you with the Truth is Unpopular shirt.
All right, I'm Brother Harold. And I'm just here to help to lend my service, whatever I can do.
And you're on the set of Reclaiming the Throne.
Shalom, people. You know how we do all day, every day, representing the Hebrew Nation building. I'm with my man, Rabbi Akwete Aman, all day, every day, representing Hebrew life, all day, every day. So you know, man, shalom, shalom, and shalom.
And this is one of the filmers. He's one of the filmers for that's filming Reclaiming the Throne. Hebrew Nation building. You guys heard of them. Hebrew Nation building.
Yeah. All right. Stay ready. Stay ready. Back.
Buried underneath the conscience of man lies the truth about our ancestors' homeland, the knowledge we once had before those days we were captured and forced into a role of slavery to a foreign master. They did their best to break us, scatter and separate us, control and subjugate us, divide and educate us. But the covenant is with us. Our didn't forsake us. Jacob was the dreamer, we his children, time to wake up.
Been stripped and sold, bleeding broke. Rulership done been revoked. 400 years, blood, sweat, and tears. And I call my slave, now be awoke. Reverse the curse that Moses spoke. Yeah, I be the king, don't need the pope. Right or wrongs, reclaim the thrones. And take a stand like leader told. Israel, we rise up. Judah, we rise up. Listen here, it's in his will that we should build and rise up. Take the throne, we in the zone. So lift them heads and eyes up. Free the people that's in the book. Ain't no more holding them lies up. Israel, we rise up. Judah, we rise up. Listen here, it's in his will that we should build and rise up. Take the throne, we in the zone, so lift them heads and eyes up. Free the people that's in the book, ain't no more holding them lies up.
I remember when I was a little boy, I used to see all these white people walking around on Saturdays. And so I asked my mom, Mama, who are those white people walking around with black hats, black suits, beards, and long sideburns? And she said to me, Ronald, those are the Jews of the Bible. And so I asked her, who are we? And she said to me, we are the Gentiles. I never understood what a Gentile was or who black people were in the Bible until 2011. This is when the Most High showed me the truth, and the book Hebrews to Negroes was born. I never understood what a Gentile was or who black people were in the Bible until 2011. This is when the Most High showed me the truth, and the book Hebrews to Negroes was born. I never understood what a Gentile was or who black people were in the Bible until 2011. This is when the Most High showed me the truth, and the book Hebrews to Negroes was born.
Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? Prey, my son, thou art gone up. Stooped down, couched as a lion. Old lion.
The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. Embrace it.
races and religions, free to worship as they please. This too is America.
People are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children. Seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children.
For most Black Americans, religion has been instilled to us by our parents and the Black church. In addition, our history has been told to us by white America. In Africa, the Bantu people's true history has been clouded by European Jewish colonialism and Arab colonialism, all thanks to the slave trades. This is why we see half of Africa as belonging to Islam and the other half to the Roman Catholic Church. But what was our true heritage and way of life before foreigners invaded Africa? What was our language? What was our name? What was our traditions, customs, and what name did we ascribe to God, the creator of the universe? In Africa, many of our long-lost brothers separated us from slavery, pray to Allah 5 times a day, or they pray to a white Jesus. However, for centuries, we have been tricked. We have upheld different religions with no questions asked, while missing the truth. Truth has been the missing ingredient all this time for us blacks in America. Now, it's a known fact that black people are naturally spiritual people, so it is no surprise that we look to our pastor for guidance. But we never seem to wonder why for centuries we have been praying to the same Jesus every other nation prays to, but it seems as though our prayers are not being answered. It seems that no matter how many times a day we pray to Allah or pray to a white Jesus, that our condition has not changed. Other nations continue to oppress, manipulate, take advantage of, and rise above us on every level. What is interesting, however, is that in the 21st century, we are seeing a massive awakening of self. Black people are reading their Bibles, and Deuteronomy 28 has turned on the light bulb of interest into searching for our true identity as it pertains to the Bible. After all, biblically, we should all descend from one of Noah's 3 sons. But our identity has been either Gentiles, Canaanites, Negroes, or African Americans. But here's the problem. The word Negro or African American doesn't tell us nothing about our heritage. And as we can see today on the streets, in certain churches, and on social media, black people are now finding out that they are the real lost children of Israel. In turn, they are realizing the Sephardic, Ashkenazi, and Mizrahi Jews in Israel are just religious converts with no biblical blood connection to the ancient 12 tribes of Israel. So why have we been deceived for so long? Why hasn't the black church for decades been aware of who we are according to biblical history? Well, for almost 400 years, we have been teaching the message that what has been passed down to us from the slave plantation religious minister was truth. Using one literate religious Negro, a specific message can be pounded into the minds of Negro Christians or different denominations generation after generation. This message, which has been altered and manipulated for a specific agenda, becomes the standard of truth to the black Christian world, and here we are today in the 21st century. So it's no wonder why in Sunday school as black children growing up, we were coloring images of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Joshua, King David, King Solomon, and Jesus with a white crayon. It's no wonder why the black Christian church and the Roman Catholic Church has been blessing the wrong chosen people of God and oppressing the real Israelites. So who is to blame? Is it the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Edomites, the Jewish Pharisees of old, or anyone of European descent? Is it partly our fault? Well, the seed of Edom, the seed of Cain, the synagogue of Satan, and Lucifer himself are the major confederate that has been against us for a very long time. Well, the time has come where God is waking up his lost sheep of Israel. We are possibly seeing an era where the time of the Gentiles is being fulfilled. Now, the word fulfilled in the dictionary means come to an end. This is also the time where the natural branch of Israel is gearing up to take back its rightful position.
Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be.
So to understand the history of the Hebrew Israelites, we have to go back to Abraham. And when we talk about Abraham, we can't ignore the descendants of Cush and also the descendants of Shem.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Raamah, and Sabteka. And the sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth, and Calah, and Resen between Nineveh and Calah, the same as a great city. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram.
So according to extra-biblical reports of ancient scholars, what was the overall census of the skin complexion of the sons of Noah? Has the Roman Catholic Church and modern Judaism been lying to us all this time about the true ethnic origin and skin color of the major players of Noah's family tree in the Bible? In regards to the foundation of all the three Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, is the common notion to believe that Abraham and his wife Sarah were white-skinned, straight-haired individuals living in what is now called South Iraq. Despite what the Bible says, the false teaching of the sons of Abraham, the Ishmaelite Arabs, Isaac, Jacob, and the Israelites were light-skinned people, or what others may say olive-skinned, still holds strong to this day. So what exactly was the skin color or ethnicity of the forefathers of Terah and Abraham? To find this out, we need to travel up on the family tree to Shem and his descendants, meaning Arphaxad, Aram, Ashur, Elam, and Lud. Shem's 5 sons populated ancient Mesopotamia and parts of Asia Minor. Arphaxad in particular was a lot of the territory of modern-day Iraq, which in ancient times was the Sumerian land of Ur, where Terah, Abraham, and his family lived before traveling to the land of Canaan. In Genesis 24, Abraham makes his servant swear an oath by putting his hand underneath Abraham's thigh, not to let his sons marry the daughters of the Canaanites. This tradition, called the Yerek Oath, by touching the thigh or foot of a master, was said to be common in 11th century AD in India. In India, the Hindu creator god Brahma had a daughter and half-sister for his wife named Saraswati. Now this sounds like similar stories in comparison to Abraham and Sarah in the Bible, doesn't it?
And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife.
And what most people don't realize is that the answer to Abraham's ethnicity can be found in the sons of Cush and the Dravidian people of India, Sri Lanka, and South Asia.
And Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity, in Ur of the Chaldees.
In ancient history, before the word Iraq existed, ancient Mesopotamia was inhabited by the Sumerians, which Sargon the Great referred to as Sa-Gig-Ga, or the black-headed peoples. The cities of Mesopotamia were Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh, and Nineveh, in the land of Shinar. The language spoken by the Sumerians in the land of Ur in Iraq was cuneiform Sanskrit, similar to the cuneiform Sanskrit writing styles seen today in the Dravidian language, Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, and Malayalam. But how can this be? Isn't Arabic closer to Abraham's language? Are the people of Iraq today, the Chaldean Christian Iraqis and Muslim Iraqis, the descendants of Abraham? In all actuality, the answer is no. Before Arabic, Aramaic, and Paleo-Hebrew, cuneiform script was being used in the land of Ur, the land of Terah, Abraham's father. Cuneiform Sanskrit today is the parent of all the languages in India, especially the Indian Dravidian language Tamil. It most resembles the ancient language spoken during Abraham's time in the land of Ur or modern-day Iraq. So if today's Dravidian Indian are connected to the Shemitic peoples of Mesopotamia in the Bible, where does Abraham come into play and his future seed, the children of Israel? What is their connection to Cush? And remember, in the book of Genesis chapter 10, the beginning cities Babel and Uruk of Iraq were built by Nimrod, the son of Cush. Well, let's take a look at the language of the Dravidian Indians in comparison to Hebrew and the ancient Semitic, Sumerian, Akkadian, Proto-Babylonian, Assyrian language of Mesopotamia at the time. Then we need to look into the bloodline of Cush, its influence in Mesopotamia, and its connection to India. Then we can conclude that the early Hebrew forefathers, meaning Peleg, Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah, and Abraham, were a mixture of Shem and a little bit of Cush. This is one of many pieces of evidence that can be used to prove that the 12 tribes of Israel were not white-skinned people.
This is one of many pieces of evidence that can be used to prove that the 12 tribes of Israel were not white-skinned people.
And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.
Now, the Dutch East Indian slave ship Merman, between the 1600s to the 1700s AD, was regularly transporting anywhere from 150 to 400 slaves annually from South India, Burma, and Bengal. The Dutch seized Portuguese settlements on the Malabar coast in India in the mid-1600s, and because of this, a large number of slaves were sent to the Indian state of Kerala, to Batavia, which is in Java, Indonesia, Ceylon, which is Sri Lanka, or Elam, and the Cape in South Africa, and elsewhere to work on plantations. Many of these so-called East Indians were kidnapped by the Muslims and sold at the city called Cochin to the Dutch slaveholders. The Arab slave trade of the East African Bantu Israelites during the 8th century shipped slaves all across the Eastern Hemisphere, including Madagascar. By the 16th century AD, the Dutch, including other European countries, got involved with the capturing of slaves from East Africa, Madagascar, the Malabar coast, the Coromandel coast, Bengal, and Indonesia. And during the 18th century, a high number of slaves in indentured service were taken from India and East Africa to do slave work in the Americas, the Caribbean, and South Africa, which was called the Cape. Now, does this hint to the curses of Israel? Now wait till you see some of the Hebrew influences in the language of these South Asian nations. The language of South India is Tamil and Malayalam, and the language of Sri Lanka is Tamil and Sinhalese.
The language of South India is Tamil and Malayalam. The language of Sri Lanka is Tamil and Sinhalese.
Now, is there proof that the people in India are the descendants of Abraham's Semitic ancestors that live in the land of Ur, Iraq? Well, thanks to scholars like Dr. K. Loganatha Mudarayan from Malaysia, the late Professor A. Kadasivam from Sri Lanka, and the Kish Temple in ancient Samaria, Iraq, we can now prove that the ancestors of the modern-day East Indian originally lived in Mesopotamia during biblical times. In a few, I will let the language of the ancient Sumerians in Iraq and the Dravidian people in South India reveal some striking truths in regards to the sons of Shem. Also, you will see how the mother tongue of the Mandingo Soninke tribe people in Senegal, Gambia, Mali, and Guinea shows evidence of influence from ancient Babylon, Assyria, the same place the Hebrew Israelites were exiled to in the Bible. It is also a known fact that the ancient writing script of the Mandingo Soninke Bantus people in the 11th century AD resembled the same Aramaic Hebrew script used in Iberia when the Black Moors and the Black Israelites ruled the land. But before we get started, let's get a first-hand account of where some of the Black Israelites lived in Africa and their place of origin by the Black Muslims in northern Nigeria. One of the largest culturally homogeneous group of Black Muslims is in Central West Africa with the Hausa people. There are many different histories of the origin of the Hausa Black Muslims, but the common consensus is that the Hausas originally started off through the North African Hamitic Berber lineage from Egypt, which is Mizraim in the Bible, and Libya, which is Put in the Bible. Over time, during the Assyrian invasion of Egypt in the 7th century BC, and the invasion of Africa by the Black Ishmaelite Arabs in the 7th century AD, the Hausa people experienced a Semitic gene flow from Mesopotamia, which is also known as Iraq, and Arabia. Today, the Hausas speak an Afro-Asiatic language which is related to Hebrew, Amharic, the North African Hamitic dialects, and Somalian Egyptian dialects. The Hausa people mostly live in North Nigeria, Chad, and Niger. The majority religion now is Islam for the Hausa people, but prior to the 1500s, many Hausas were pagan worshippers who often dealt in sun god worship, which they call Ra or Rana, similar to the Egyptian sun god Ra. Because of their history of mixing with other nations, including their Bantus, Negro slaves, genetically the Hausas have a mixture of Israelite, Canaanite, Cushite, Egyptian, and Semitic ancestry. According to their autosomal DNA, their genetic stock is mostly from ancient Egypt and ancient Kush or Nubia. Now here's where it gets very interesting. In 1849, the Biafran Igbo Israelites were conquered by the British. 3 years later, in 1852, the British conquered the Benin, Edo, Beni Israelites in South Nigeria. Between 1899 and 1903, the British, led by Sir Frederick Lugard in the Battle of Kano, were successful in defeating the Sokoto Caliphate and the Hausa people. After this, Sir Frederick Lugard held the title of the first Governor General of Nigeria, the last Governor of Southern Nigeria, the last Governor of Northern Nigeria, and the Governor also of Hong Kong in China. The British eventually placed the Hausa people in political power over Nigeria and the Biafran Igbo Israelites who strongly resisted British rule. This would become the catalyst for the Biafran War in the 1960s by the Hausa-dominated Nigerian government and Igbo Israelite Biafrans. This would become the catalyst for the Biafran War in the 1960s by the Hausa-dominated Nigerian government and Igbo Israelite Biafrans. Now, before the British even conquered Nigeria, there was a man named Muhammad Bello an ancestor of the Hausa people in the Borno state, who was the second black Arab sultan of the North Nigerian Sokoto Caliphate in the early 1800s. Now, Muhammad Bello, he quoted in his records, the Taurud and Taurud people, it is said, were originally Jews. Others say Christians, that they came from the land between two rivers, the Nile and the Euphrates, and established themselves next to the Jews who inhabited the island of Cape Verde. Now, this is also seen in our Bible in the book of Genesis, chapter 15, verses 18.
In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates.
Now, Muhammad Bello also stated that the kingdom of Mali is an ancient and flourishing country and comprises two other provinces. One is Bambara, which contains rivers, woods, sands, and a gold mine, and is occupied by the Sudan, who are still infidels and possess great power. The other, on the west of it, is the Futa, which is inhabited by the Taurud and the Soninke, or foreigners. And what's interesting is that he also made another comment stating that near to Bambara, there is the province of the Taurud and that of the Fut, which are extensive, inhabited by their own people and by those of Sarankale or Soninke, also called Ajam, meaning alien or foreigner. This region is known today as modern-day Senegal, Gambia, and Mauritania. Now, the Futa Toro was in the north, while the Futa Jalan was in the south, consisted of modern-day Guinea and Sierra Leone. Now, keep this in mind. The tribes that inhabited the Futa Toro and the Futa Jalan region in West Africa back then, their descendants can be seen today in the Tukulur tribe, the Wolof Serer tribe, the Iwan-Biwane Fulanis in Guinea, the Mandingo Soninke tribe, the Balanta tribe, and the Mende tribe. According to the black Muslims in Central Africa and Mali, many Bantu tribes in the Futa regions were still following the Mosaic law as per Hebrew customs and not Islam. This is why they are listed in their books as infidels and foreigners. The Bantu Israelite slaves multiplied so much while they were in captivity to the Fulani people that they assimilated into the black Arab Tuareg Fulani tribes in West Africa. Now, the Tuareg black Berber Muslims called them Bella, and the Masina Fulani people called them Remebi. Over time, the Fulani tribe and their Israelite Negro slaves assimilated into the North Senegal and South Mauritania region known as the Senegal River Valley or the Futa Turo. After many power struggle wars, many Israelite Mandingos migrated south to the Futa Julan region near Gambia and Guinea. Now, based on this knowledge, can we prove with Bible scriptures and what language that these Israelites Muhammad Bello wrote about were the descendants of the ancient Israelites scattered into Assyria, Babylon, and Africa, where brown skin tones dominated? You be the judge.
The king of Assyria did carry away Israel unto Assyria, and put them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon.
Now, Iraq is a country or a land between the two rivers, the Nile and the Euphrates River. In biblical times, it was known as Babylon. The country of Iran in biblical times was known as Medes Persia. So if some of the Israelites were exiled into Babylon and Medes Persia, is there a chance that they mixed languages with the people of these lands? Is there a chance that some of these Israelites kept moving east into Central Asia or India, fathering children with foreign women? Is there a chance that some of these Israelites also went into Africa instead of going east? As you will now see, the languages of the Dravidian Indian in South India, the ancient Sumerians, and the Mandingo Soninke people in West Africa seem to have some connection to the land between two rivers in Mesopotamia. Coincidence? I think not.
West Africa seem to have some connection to the land between two rivers in Mesopotamia. Coincidence? I think not.
So who are today's descendants of the sons of Shem that lived in ancient Mesopotamia? And here are two lines from the Babylonian Sumerian instructions of Shirapak from 2600 BC, which were found in modern-day Tel Farar in Iraq, aka the land of Ur of the Chaldees and the Sumerians. Also included is the Tamil language version from South India of the same Sumerian Babylonian 5,000-year-old inscription. Now keep in mind, around 2600 BC, Shem and his sons were living in modern-day Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Shem is the ancestor of Abraham, the great-grandfather of the children of Israel. Now here you will see the Indian Tamil script and its English letter equivalents for pronunciation. Now if you look closely comparing the two languages of the Semitic Sumerians and the South Indian Tamil people, you can see the similarities. Often the only difference in the scripts is a letter switch from P to B, or S to C, or E to I, or B to P. Now this is not a coincidence. More proof? Let's see another example of the Tamil East Indian language in comparison to the Babylonian Shemitic Sumerian language. Now here's another sample from the Sumerian Babylonian Kes temple hymns from around 2200 BC. The hymns are attributed to Enhed Duana, the daughter of Sumerio, Akkadian king Sargon the Great. Now this very well proves that the dark-skinned Davridian Indian people are the long-lost descendants of the ancient Semitic sons of Shem, Arphaxad, Ashur, Aram, Elam, and Lud. After all, Assyria in ancient times often overlapped the territory of Arphaxad, Ashur, Aram, and Elam. Proving that the original Shemites were a people of brown skin color like the Davridian Indian also proves that Eber, Peleg, Terah, Abraham, Nahor, Haran, Isaac, Jacob, and the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible could not have been white Arabs or white Jews. What else does it prove? It proves that the original Hebrews, the sons of Eber, were not all Negroid-looking people with tight curled woolly hair, prognathous jaws, and full lips. Why? Because not everyone in South Asia looks identical to Negroes in America. Not everyone in South Asia looks identical to Negroes in America.
From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed, shall bring mine offering.
According to the Bible, in ancient times, the Israelites dwelt in Egypt along the Nile, which is in the land of Ham or modern-day Africa. When the Israelites left Egypt, they were over 1 million strong, leaving as a mixed multitude with Moses and Joshua to the land of Canaan. But prior to the Exodus, many of the Israelite men had already took wives from Cush, which is Nubia, and Egypt. This can be seen in the case of Zipporah, Moses' Cushite wife, and Asenath, Joseph's Egyptian wife. Zipporah would give rise to a Cushite, Israelite, Levitical priesthood line, while Asenath, the Egyptian, would give rise to the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. In the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3, Zephaniah talks about the glorious day of the Lord when the Gentile nations receive their punishment and the children of Israel are regathered. So where does Zephaniah describe as one of the places of this regathering? From beyond the Nile River in Africa. The Nile River extends south all the way to where Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and the Congo is at, which is prime hotspots for the Bantus Israelites who endured persecution according to the curses of Israel. Now, prior to the Bantus Israelites making their way down the Nile River into different parts of Africa, the Israelites spent a lot of time in Egypt and Sudan. This can be proven by researching the oral history of the Bantus, Kikuyu, the Kamba, the Kisi, Aluya, Sukuma, Ewe, Yoruba, and Igbo people, and also the Tutsi Jews. But what caused the Bantus people to leave Egypt and Sudan once they had already escaped captivity in Israel? The rise of Islam with the black Arab invasion into Northeast Africa and the Arab slave trade. Now, can we prove outside of the Bible that the Bantus Negroes lived in Israel during biblical times, eventually finding their way into Africa during the Assyrian siege, the Babylonian siege, and the Roman siege? This can be proven scientifically with archaeology combined with DNA testing. Now, British archaeologist Dorothy Annie Elizabeth Garrett worked on excavations at Mount Carmel in Palestine, demonstrating ancient skeletal fossil remains in the caves of Tabun, El Wad, Shukba, and the Kabar. The Shukba cave was located on the northern bank of Wadi and Natuf, which is located in modern-day Palestinian West Bank territory in Israel. There was no name for the people these skeletal remains belonged to, so they named these people the Natufians, named after Wadi and Natuf. Dorothy Garrett's work would not be in vain. In 2016, a genetic study was done on the migration of a select people from Northeast Africa into Israel, who brought pastoralism and farming. This was dated to BC biblical times. The study was called The Genetic Structure of the World's First Farmers by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories BioRxiv, spearheaded by Dr. Yosef Lazaridis in the Department of Genetics, Harvard University. Data was obtained from Dorothy Garrett's Natufian skeletons found inside the caves in Israel dating back to BC times. Now, these skeletons revealed the presence of the white DNA of the Alur tribe, the Dogon tribe in Mali, Native American Indians, Australian Aborigines, the Dravidian Indian, the Black Arab Bedouins, the Pacific Islanders, Somalians, the Habesha people in Ethiopia, and the so-called Bantus Negro in Israel. Now, according to Israeli archaeologist Dr. Ofer Bar Yosef, British-American biological forensic anthropologist Dr. John Lawrence Angel, and others, the Natufian skeletal finds exhibited Negroid traits, such as Ethiopic and Bushmanoid traits. The skull shape, the nose, the teeth, the prognathism of the jaw, and DNA markers found in the ancient skulls in Israel prove the ancient people living in Israel during biblical times were not a race of white Jews or white Arabs. Now, French bioanthropologist archaeologist Dr. Fanny Beauquentin, British-American bioanthropologist Dr. John Lawrence Angel, and American biopaleoanthropologist Dr. Charles Loring Brace all revealed in their Natufian research that the sub-Saharan Niger-Congo Bantus African populations have a clear link to the BC Natufian people in Israel. The Natufian people supposedly brought pastoral living and farming to Israel, not new hunter-gatherer practices. But this account is nothing new when comparing the knowledge to the biblical accounts of the Canaanites and the Israelites.
These men are peaceable with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein. For the land, behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only herein will the men consent unto us for to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours?
Now Shechem was the Canaanite city mentioned in the Canaanite Amarna letters to the Egyptian pharaoh after the Exodus. and is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as an Israelite city of the tribe of Manasseh and the first capital of the Kingdom of Israel. Now, geneticist Dr. Peter A. Underhill from Stanford University also admitted in his research that the sub-Saharan genetic lineage is affiliated with the Y-DNA EP2, migrated through Egypt into Israel, the Middle East, and as far north as Turkey, the very place many of the letters or epistles of Paul in our New Testament were sent to. The Y-DNA EP2, according to geneticists, arose in the Horn of Africa, or what some would consider Northeast Africa. The Y-DNA EP2 will give rise to the Y-DNA EM2, aka E1B1A, which is found in the sub-Saharan Negro, and also EM329, which was associated with the Semitic Ethiopians of the Amhara people, the Eritrean people, and the Tigrayan people, or what they will call today the Habesha people. So what does all this DNA stuff really mean? Well, if the DNA of the so-called Bantus Negro is different than that of other ethnicities and tribes in Africa, then who are they? The Bantus people's customs are Hebraic, and their language, as you will see later, is influenced by the Hebrew language and the Egyptian language. Also, their oral history points back to Israel. So if it is scientifically proven that the EP2, the EM2, and the E1B1A Y-DNA originated in Northeast Africa, later appearing in Israel, it proves that the Bantus Negro people are the biblical Hebrew Israelites. Now remember, the children of Israel became a nation of people while they were living for centuries in Egypt and Nubia, which is Northeast Africa. What is even more striking is that the maternal DNA of the Bantus Negro and its downstream branches can be seen all throughout the world in different ethnicities that claim Israelite heritage. Now why is this important? Well, the maternal DNA passed from every mother to child is not influenced by who that woman marries to produce a seed, or if that seed was born out of rape from captivity. This means that no matter where the ancient Israelite women went, no matter if she birthed a child with an Israelite man or a Semitic or Hamitic or Japhetic man, her maternal DNA would track the migration route of the Hebrew tribes. After all, the Hebrew Israelite man, woman, and child were scattered to the four corners of the earth, never to return as a reunited nation until the Messiah is coming. Now the big question everyone wants to know is if the early Hebrews were a people mixed with Hamitic and Shemitic blood. The definition of a people with Hamitic-Shemitic root is called Afro-Asiatic. This excludes the children of Japhet, or the white nations of Europe, Asia Minor, and Central Asia. So what if we can prove that the ancient Hebrews, such as Terah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were Afro-Asiatic people? Now this will crush the myth or worldwide belief that Abraham, Moses, the children of Israel, and even Jesus Christ were straight-haired, white-skinned people. To prove this, let's start with the Book of Jubilees, which is canon with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews. The Book of Jubilees, known as the Lesser Genesis, was found written in ancient Hebrew in the 2,400-year-old Dead Sea Scrolls found in Qumran, Israel in 1947. When the Book of Jubilees in ancient Hebrew was compared to the Ethiopic Book of Jubilees, it was considered, word for word, a perfect match. Now in the Book of Jubilees, chapter 8, verses 7 through 9, it reads, "And she bare him a son in the 5th year thereof, and he called his name Eber. And he took unto himself a wife, and her name was Azurad, the daughter of Nimrod. In the 32nd Jubilee, in the 7th week, in the 3rd year thereof. And in the 6th year thereof she bare him a son, and he called his name Peleg. For in the days when he was born, the children of Noah began to divide the earth amongst themselves. For this reason he called his name Peleg, and they divided it secretly amongst themselves, and they told it to Noah." So here we see Eber taking the daughter of Nimrod, a Kishite woman, to be his wife. Knowing that Eber was a descendant of Arphaxad, whose land was ancient Babylon or Samaria, and Azurah was a Nubian Cushite woman, what would this possibly look like today? Now note, Peleg was Abraham's great-great-great-grandfather, and Abraham was the grandfather of Jacob, the father of the children of Israel. From the Hebrew Strong's number 5680, the word Ebri, and the Hebrew Strong's number 5677, Eber, do we get the foundation for the word Hebrew. For example, in the Bible, Abraham recognized that there was, is, and will be but one Elohim, the creator of heaven and earth. Abraham was not caught up in polytheism and pagan worship like his father Terah. Instead, he dedicated his whole life to spreading the knowledge of God. Abraham was known in the Bible as Ha-Ibri, or the Hebrew, which also means the one on the other side, or to cross over. Now, where did Abraham cross over from? Was it the Euphrates-Tigris River? In those days, all the world was on one side worshiping pagan gods, and Abraham was alone on the other side worshiping the one true creator of all things, who was called Yahuwah or Yahuwah by the early children of Israel. Now, for those who still have doubt, take this amazing fact into consideration. Joshua, an ancient Israelite from the tribe of Ephraim, quoted from the book of Jasher, a book all European Jews today are familiar with. Now, Joshua was the one that led the children of Israel into the land of Canaan. So if Joshua mentioned the book of Jasher in the Bible, wouldn't it be considered a reliable source of ancient Hebrew history?
And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son. Also he bade them teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher?
So now that you have read this quote from the book of Joshua, now read what is in the book of Jasher. Now in the book of Jasher, in chapter 7, verses 49 to 51, it reads, And Terah, the son of Nahor, prince of Nimrod's host, was in those days very great in the sight of the king and his subjects. And the king and the princes loved him, and they elevated him very high. And Terah took a wife, and her name was Amthello, the daughter of Cornebo, a Cushite priest. And the wife of Terah conceived and bare him a son in those days. So who was the son that was born to Terah and a Cushite woman? Now this son was Abraham. But how can we be so sure Terah's wife was a Cushite Nubian woman? Well, the Bible tells us that the family of Nimrod, the son of Cush, ruled over the land of Ur, which is Babylon, Iraq, when Terah's family called this place home.
And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar.
Now the scriptures say that Terah was 7 years old when he bore Abraham. At those times he was a prince to the king Nimrod, who raised him in those days and dignified him above all the princes that were with him. So let's backtrack again so we can understand the true ethnicity of the forefathers of Jacob and the children of Israel. Now, if Nimrod's Cushite family ruled the land of Ur, of Terah's nativity in the Bible, and if Terah held a high position as prince in the Cushite royal family with Nimrod, we should assume that his wife Amthello, the daughter of priest Cornebo, was most likely of Cushite stock. This Cushite woman, Amthello, and the Hebrew man Terah will give birth to Abraham. This will make Abraham an Afro-Asiatic brown-skinned man, not a white-skinned European-looking man like today's white Jews. So is there any archaeological or DNA proof to back this up? Well, there sure is. Now the maternal DNA of the Bantus West Africans, the Bantu South Africans, the Bantus East Africans, including Ethiopians, Ethiopian Jews, Dravidian Indians in South India, and Black Pacific Islanders can all be found to be related to one another. In the Bet Alpha Synagogue in the Bet Alpha Synagogue National Park near Bet Shean, Israel, it shows a mosaic from over 1,500 years ago which depicts Abraham and Sarah with dark brown skin and afros. But don't take my word for it. The 1st century Roman historian Cornelius Tacitus, who lived in the 1st century AD, had these thoughts on the Hebrews. In his literary work, Histories 5.2-5, he writes about the Hebrews. Many again say that they are a race of Ethiopian origin, while other translations read, many assert that the Hebrews are a race of Ethiopian origins. Now, if the early Hebrews were a race of Ethiopian origin, they must have been black to look upon, as the meaning of the word Ethiopian can be linked to the Greek word meaning burnt faces or dark skin tones. Now, these characteristics and skin complexion in ancient times were only attributed to a people living in Africa and all the way across the Arabian Sea to India and Asia. Now, there was a Greek historian named Ephorus who lived during 400 BC who quoted, "The eastern Ethiopians, for two nations of this name served in, the Ethiopians were considered as occupying all the south coast of both Asia and Africa." And he added that this is an ancient opinion of the Greeks. Now, the Greek historian Herodotus, who lived during 490 BC, he quoted that the eastern Ethiopians, for two nations of the same name served in the army, were martial with the Indians. They differed in nothing from the other Ethiopians, save in their language and the character of their hair. For the eastern Ethiopians have straight hair, while they of Libya or Africa are more woolly haired than any other people in the world. Now take this in consideration. As early as the 12th century AD, mention is made of the black Jews in southern India and the native black Semitic people they lived amongst in exile. The Gentile Jewish traveler from Spain, Benjamin of Tudela, speaking of Kolam on the Malabar coast, writes in his itinerary, "Throughout the island, including all the towns thereof, live several thousand Israelites. The inhabitants are all black, and the Jews also." Now, these people later became known as the Black Malabar Jews in Kerala, India, and later the Gentile Sephardic Jews around the time of the 15th century AD would mysteriously find their way to India, where these Sephardic immigrants would be known as the Paradesi white Jews. Now, the descendants of the Black Malabar or Cochin Jews had their DNA analyzed. And the 2009 DNA report confirmed that the Ethiopian Jews of Beta Israel and the Indian Jews of B'nai Israel and Cochin have similarities in their DNA. Now, one chronicle in India tells how a group of Jews descended from the Assyrian exile of the 10 northern tribes made their way to Calicut, Kerala by way of Arabia, Yemen. And a Malayalam Jewish song from Kerala, India suggests that the Jews of the ancient town of Pallora may have come from Yemen. It is a known fact that many of the dialects of Malayalam in South India have traces of Assyrian, Aramaic, and Hebrew influences. Now, in regards to the Greeks were classified as black Ethiopians and black Egyptians under the term Ethiops, Nubian, and Niger, simply because these names were associated with dark-skinned people. English archaeologist Sir Godfrey Higgins, who lived in the 1700s, would write the following about the Ethiopians. According to many ancient testimonies, the inhabitants of Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, Western Asia, and India were Ethiopians, therefore Africans. Back in that era, there were two lands called Ethiopia, one on the east of the Red Sea and the other on the west of it. And a very great nation of blacks from India did rule almost all over Asia in a very remote era, in fact, beyond the reach of history of any of our records. Now, Strabo was the Greek historian who lived around 63 BC and he died around 24 AD. Now, he spent most of his travels in Kush and in Egypt. Now, he stated that the whole of India is traversed by rivers. As for the people of India, those in the south are like the Ethiopians in color, although they are like the rest in respect to the countenance or appearance and also hair. For on account of the humidity of the air, the hair does not curl, whereas those in the north are like the Egyptians. Now, Arian of Nicomedia, a Greek historian who lived during the 1st century AD, in his literary work Indica, he quoted that the appearance of the inhabitants is also not very different in India and Ethiopia. The southern Indians have rather more like Ethiopians, as they were black to look on, and their hair is black. Only they are not so stub-nosed and woolly-haired as the Ethiopians. The northern Indians are most like the Egyptians physically. So after all this evidence of the mixing of Ham seed with the descendants of Eber, isn't it interesting that Abram's name was later changed to Abraham? The Most High changed Abram's name to Abraham because he was to be the father of a multitude of nations, mainly through the mixing of Ham's seed, not Japheth's seed. Nevertheless, by seeing all this with evidence and using critical thinking, we should be able to understand how the children of Israel got their brown skin complexion, something we don't see with the people who came to Israel in 1948, called themselves Jews.
Understand how the children of Israel got their brown skin complexion. Don't see with the people who came to Israel in 1948, called themselves Jews.
Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord.
Now Ham had a son named Mizraim, who would be the father of Egypt, or his most ancient name, Kemet, which is an ancient Egyptian word for black. The ancient Egyptians called themselves Kam or Kam-O, which means black people or black god people. Everyone knows by seeing countless pictures of Egyptian drawings that the ancient Egyptians were a race of brown black people. It is also a known fact that the other black nations ruled as the pharaohs of Egypt as well. The black Libyans ruled over Egypt in the 22nd to 23rd dynasties under Shoshenq I, Orsakan II, and Eaput II. This was in the BC era, over 1,000 years before the Muslim Arabs invaded Egypt or Libya. The Nubians of Sudan and Ethiopia, or Kush, also ruled Egypt during the 25th dynasty. Their pictures from 2,000 or 3,000 years ago show them to be black, despite the white Egyptian Arabs who we commonly see today in North Africa. Now, it is a known fact that when white people visit Egypt today, the locals immediately recognize them as Kawaga, which means foreigners, despite what is portrayed in Hollywood movies. But when African Americans visit Egypt, they are often mistaken for native Egyptians and are referred to as Masri or Mizri, meaning Egyptians in Arabic, which is based off the Hebrew word Mizraim for Egypt. In many cases, African Americans have also been referred to as Ibn Yaqub by the Arab locals when visiting the historical pyramids. Ibn Yaqub basically means son of Jacob in Arabic. So why would the local Arab Egyptians refer to black people as the sons of Jacob or the Egyptians? In the world today, many Christians are realizing that there has been a huge cover-up of real biblical history. Satan knows that if he can hide the true identity of the ancient Egyptians and the sons of Ham, he can keep the real Israelites from waking up to their true identity. So how has this mastermind deception continued for so long? It's easy. The powers to be simply have to present another people to the world to be the Egyptians and the Israelites of the Bible using the mass media or Western education. The mass media for centuries has whitewashed the true black identity of the ancient Egyptians. They know that the head busts, the stone statues, the mummified pharaohs of Egypt, and the pictures on the walls in Egypt depict a different Egyptian than what is shown on TV today. This is why on TV, when our channels report from North Africa, Egypt, Israel, or the Middle East, they always show pictures of white-skinned Arabs. On the movie screen, the Egyptians are just plain white, which is plain wrong. According to biblical history, Abraham's son Ishmael is birthed by a black Egyptian woman named Hagar. In the Bible, she's referred to as Hagar the Egyptian. Hagar later gets a wife for her son Ishmael from black Egypt. Now, this would technically make the Ishmaelite Arabs back then and today black. After all, if Abraham was a black-skinned Shemitic man and Hagar was a black-skinned Hamite, their offspring should also be black. This can be proven by the historical writings of the ancient Arabs. The 7th century AD Arab poet Miskin al-Darimi quoted, "I am Miskin for those who know me. My color is dark, the color of the Arabs." Now, Arab linguist Ibn Mandur, who lived around 1260 AD, wrote in his book Lisan al-Arab that, quote, "The predominant complexion of the Arabs is dark brownish black, and that of the non-Arabs is white." Now, Ibn Mandur also quoted that non-kinky hair is the kind of hair that most non-Arabs like the Romans and Persians have, while kinky hair is the kind of hair that most Arabs have. So if Ishmael had a black Egyptian mother named Hagar, and he also had an Egyptian wife, the evidence of black Egyptian physical traits should be seen in people with true Egyptian ancestry or true black Arab ancestry.
The evidence of black Egyptian physical traits should be seen in people with true Egyptian ancestry or true black Arab ancestry.
The truth is, the white Arabs and the white European Jews' real biblical identity has been hidden today because the term Semitic has been used to describe them since they currently live in biblical Shemitic lands. However, maternal DNA studies reveal that the true origin of today's Arabs and Jews comes from the many sons and women of Japheth, who dwelt in Central Asia, most notably modern-day southern Russia, western Russia, aka the Pale of Settlements, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. The Seljuk Turks, the Oghuz Turks, the Uzbeks, Kurds, and other Turkish Hunnish groups would eventually over time migrate west to the Middle East and Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. They would adopt Islam as their religion and then conquer North Africa, the Levant, and Jerusalem under the latter name, the Ottoman Turkish Islamic Caliphate. In 1948, the European people of Turkish, Hunnic, Bulgar, Slavic, Khazar, and Germanic descent who converted to Judaism would conquer British Mandate Palestine, otherwise known as Arab Palestine, renaming it Israel. So as you can see, the true ethnicity of Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the Israelites cannot be taught correctly in the church or on TV unless we have a clear understanding of the ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians. This is because the biblical Ishmaelite Arabs were a people heavily mixed with black Egyptian DNA, and the Israelites mixed with the black Egyptians for 400 plus years before they left with Moses to journey to the land of Canaan. In addition, 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel, Ephraim and Manasseh, will come from the stock of a black Egyptian woman named Asenath.
And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
So to erase the false teaching we have gotten for years, we need to see what ancient historians had to say about the skin color or appearance of the ancient Egyptians. Now Herodotus, a Greek historian who lived and spent time in Egypt during 480 BC, made a statement about a group of people called the Colchians who resembled the Egyptians but lived in above the Turkey-Armenia boundaries along the western slope of the Caucasus Mountains near the Black Sea in what is now called the European country Georgia. Now he quoted, "For the fact is I soon came to realize myself, and then heard from others later that the Colchians are obviously Egyptian. When the notion occurred to me, I asked both the Colchians and the Egyptians about it, and found that the Colchians had better recall the Egyptians than the Egyptians did of them. Some Egyptians said that they thought that the Colchians originated with Pharaoh's Sesostris army, but I myself guessed their Egyptian origin not only because of the Colchians are dark-skinned and curly-haired, but more importantly because Colchians, Egyptians, and the Ethiopians are the only peoples in the world who practice circumcision and who have always done so." Now Aeschylus, who lived around 520 to 456 BC, was a Greek poet who admitted in his literary work, The Suppliants, that the Egyptians in his time were black. Now he quoted, "The crews must be Egyptian, for their black limbs stand out clear to the eye against their white tunics." He also quoted that the Egyptians are presented as having a dark complexion. The entire Egyptian army is said to be black by both the Danaans and Danaus. When found from his lookout, he distinguishes the Egyptians in their first ship as their black limbs are shown from their white garments. Now, Aristotle, who lived in the 4th century BCE, a Greek scholar and philosopher, quotes this racist statement about the Egyptians: "Those who are black are cowards like the Egyptians and the Ethiopians."
Those who are black are cowards like the Egyptians.
The world is so confused right now that even though we see an agenda to whitenize the Egyptians, When black people or anybody non-white say that they are the Israelites, people say, nope, you are a Hamite Egyptian, or no, you are a Hamite Canaanite. These statements have been attributed to the so-called Negro and the so-called Native American Indian, which are bywords given to these people groups by the European sons of Japheth. Now, was this trickery and confusion prophesied in the Bible?
God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee.
So what are the cold, hard facts that cannot be disputed? Based on language, passed down traditions, the DNA haplogroup testing of ancient skeletons from Egypt, and what geneticists call matched likelihood index autosomal STR testing scores, the bloodline of the ancient Egyptians is not seen in the so-called Bantus race. In all actuality, the bloodline of the ancient Egyptians can be seen in the Dogon tribe, the Fulani people, the Alur tribe, the Hausa people, the Beja, Afar peoples, and the Somalian tribes in the Horn of Africa. According to Abbasid 9th century Muslim geographer Ahmad al-Yaqubi, the Beja people in ancient times had kingdoms stretching from Aswan in South Egypt to Massawa in Eritrea. Now, some Egyptologists say linguistically the Beja tribe has similarities to the language of the ancient Egyptians, just like certain tribes in Somalia. Their language also falls into the Kush family of languages seen in Sudan and Nubia, which was a part of ancient southern Egypt in BC times. To top this off, German-born 19th century Egyptologist Emily Bruce traced a certain clan of the Beja people to the Egyptian people of the 20th dynasty. Now, American physician and scientist Samuel George Morton proved in the 1844 AD Crania Egyptica study that there was a clear distinction between the Negro and native Egyptians. With craniometry comparison of ancient Egyptian skulls and sub-Saharan Negro skulls from West Africa, Morton proved that the Egyptian ruling elite class of ancient Egypt had a different skull shape than the subservient slave class at the time. Now, whose skull matched up perfectly with the subservient slave class, which in the Bible was the Hebrew Israelites? The sub-Saharan Bantus Negro skull. Now, this proves that the ancient Egyptians and the sub-Saharan Bantus people were two different people. Now, to prove the claim that the Bantus people are not the ancient Egyptians even more, let's examine the article called Ancient Egyptian Mummy Genome Suggests an Increase in Sub-Saharan African Ancestry in Post-Roman Periods by paleogeneticist and Professor Verena V.J. Schneemann at the University of Zurich with her co-partner, archaeogeneticist Professor Dr. Alexander Peltzer from the Institute for the Science of Human History. Now, this article proved that from the New Kingdom Egyptian period around 1388 BC to the Roman period around 1st century AD, the sub-Saharan Bantus people were minimally present in Egypt. Their studies on the ancient Egyptian mummies and more modern Egyptian skeletal remains show that after the Roman period, DNA skeletal evidence proved that the Bantus Negro people brought their gene flow back from outside of Africa or Israel into Egypt. This, of course, was the emigration of the remaining Israelites in Israel into Africa by way of Egypt. The common denominator in the oral history of where many Bantus tribes scattered in Africa claim to have migrated from to get to their current location. Now, if a people claim to be one of the 12 tribes of Israel, then they need to be able to prove this using facts, showing multiple connections to the ancient Israelites, not just the fact that they follow Torah. So we already have autosomal paternal DNA haplogroup markers from ancient Egyptian skeletons, and craniometry studies proving that the so-called Negro was not a pure Egyptian. But what if we can also use the language from ancient Israel during BC times, oral histories and traditions and customs to prove who was the real Israelites? Many Bantus Negro African tribes, including the early indigenous Indians of the Americas, were found to contain similar DNA markers and language patterns that hinted to a common place of origin. By using the language spoken in Israel prior to the emergence of King Saul, which is, by the way, Egyptian and Hebrew, we could track down the migration routes of the ancient Israelites. Now, this is not hard to believe or accept if we use critical thinking. Because after spending 400 years in America, Negroes from West Africa have mastered the English language, forgetting the language of their forefathers. But this erasing of language did not happen with the mixed multitude of people that left with Moses during the Exodus.
And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And the son of an Israelitish woman, whose father was an Egyptian, went out among the children of Israel, and this son of the Israelitish woman and a man of Israel strove together in the camp.
Now, based on these scriptures, wouldn't true Israelites today still have some evidence of the Egyptian and Hebrew language in their dialect today? Wouldn't there be some proof? While investigating the Australian Aborigines in Australia, Professor A.P. Elkin of Sydney University in Australia came up with Aboriginal tribes in Australia displaying Semitic Mediterranean facial features with Egyptian words in their language. Now, the Hebrew Israelites were Semitic, and they knew the language of the Egyptians. Now, such proof can be found in the Bible, as Joseph was co-ruler over Egypt during his time. Moses was learning the wisdom of the Egyptians, and King Solomon had alliances with the Egyptian pharaohs of Egypt, so much so as he was given the Canaanite city of Gezer as a dowry gift for his marriage with an Egyptian princess. Now, evidence of Hebrew traditions, the Hebrew language, with also an Egyptian influence, can be seen in certain native Indian tribes, but also in the Bantus Ewe tribe, the Bantus Wolof Serer tribe, the Bantus Gadangme tribe, and the Bantus Nigerian Igbo tribe. Now let's get to the facts. In a manuscript written in the Mayan Quiche language, which is today spoken by the Quiche people in Guatemala, in 1554 AD, it tells a story from 3 Mayan Indians. A translator was able to decipher the story. Now, in the story, the Mayans said that they were the descendants of some of the 10 tribes of Israel that were exiled under the Assyrian king Shalmaneser. While in Assyria, they decided to leave and emigrate to a different land. Some were left behind, but some made it. Now, the text read in the Mayan language, "These then were 3 nations of Quiches, and they came from where the sun rises in the east, descendants of Israel, of the same language and the same customs." Now, what is interesting is that the Mayans say that they are the sons of Yaqui, and the Aztecs and Mayans say that when they were forced to leave Israel, or Tulan, they traveled south to the sea and then to the ocean. And the Aztecs and Mayans say that when they were forced to leave Israel, or Tulan, they traveled south to the sea and then to the ocean. Now, based off a direct study of the Native American Indians and ancient books such as Ills in America, or Probabilities that the Americans are of that race, written in 1650 AD by Thomas Thorogood, many Europeans believe that the Indians were descendants of the Northern Kingdom Israelites who were displaced by the Assyrian king Shalmaneser. Old accounts of stories told by the native Indians describe their people as Israelites who left Israel during the reign of the Israelite king Hosea in the 8th century BC. But this is not the only thing that they describe. Native Indians were known, according to the Jesuits, Sephardic Gentile Jews, the Mormons, and other Europeans, to exhibit the following Hebrew traditions. They performed their camp or people's division into tribes, such as the Israelites. Now, some of the tribes also wrote from right to left, just as in the Hebrew script. They followed 2 3 wheat harvests in 1 year. They didn't swear or take oaths. They didn't drink or commit adultery, and they believed in the oracle covenant. They also had an ark of Bulruth, which was similar to the Ark of the Covenant. The tabernacle was carried by 4 priests only, and they pitched a tent facing the east. And they called their aunts and uncles mother and father, which is seen in West Africa today. And they had cleanliness laws where women on their menses or after childbirth had to be set apart for 7 days, and on the 8th day they were able to come back to the village. They did not eat pork, and as in the Hebrew levirate marriage, the widow had to marry the brother of the deceased husband. Their circumcision was performed with stone knives, as in the Hebrew culture, and the Indians believed in Hades, or a great pit for sinners, which they call Papgufo. And the Indians wore vestments similar to the Aaronitical robes of the high priests, and the first fruits were offered, such as corn, meat, and fish. They observed the year of Jubilee, which is seen in the Hebrew culture, and they uttered the word hallelujah. The temple was where the Indians worshiped, they sang and prayed and made offerings. And their worship of Yahweh was known throughout many Indian tribes. Their notions of a theocracy was also seen, and they had a belief in the administration of angels. Their language and dialect showed a Hebrew influence, and they had the same manner of counting time as many of the ancient Hebrews. In the village, they had prophets, high priests, and a king hierarchy, and their divination rites were similar to the Aaronical high priesthood. Now, the Udo-Aztecan family consists of many different Indian tribes. Semitic linguistic experts in Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew all have agreed that Hebrew and Egyptian can be found in the native Indians' dialect of the Udo-Aztecan speakers. However, the truth is often suppressed of this knowledge to the outside world. Here are some of the tribes in the Udo-Aztecan family who still retain evidence of their Hebrew ancestry in the language.
We're gonna come back to it because it's definitely something deep. I ain't realize it was that deep. But that being said, thank you for tuning in.